yourself. Start with your first name, your last name, and the name of your organization. Please feel free to type your questions in French or in English.
Alors, on est bientôt à la
We are Fusion. I thank warmly our 3 interpreters who are helping us. They've been working with us as of last week, Célia, Angéline, and Nicolas. I thank all the Geneva Forum team members with Liv, Manon, Chloé, Frédéric, Marc, and Anthony.
Et puis alors merci.
A warm thanks to all of you. With David, but who will be telling us about a matter that concerns us all.
A lot of questions have been asked about tourism and whether tourism can be considered to be sustainable. The general opinion seems to be that tourism is not sustainable, but in reality there are problems with tourism, but equally there are good things that come from tourism. So we need to consider the bad and the good to arrive at a balanced view, and then we can see what we need to do to achieve sustainability. When we think about tourism, we tend to think of images like this: masses of people descending upon a particular location and the problems and benefits caused from that. But not all tourism is like this. We tend to focus upon the negative effects of tourism, and these are discussed quite widely. So we all know about such things as damage to the environment caused by the vast movements of people. We know about the effects upon climate change caused by such things as the heating of hotels, the running of airplanes all around the world, those kind of things. We know about loss of cultural identity, the fact that people, when they receive visitors from around the world, tend to lose their own identity, adapt to meet the expectations of the visitors, assimilate some of their culture, and there's a tendency towards global homogeneity of culture, which many people think is undesirable. Then there are the changed economic circumstances brought about by tourism coming into the area. People need to earn a living in different ways, those kind of things. But that is not necessarily bad. That can be good because people tend to be more prosperous. And the major thing that we focus upon is travel and the pollution and congestion caused by travel. Pollution caused by aeroplanes, buses, trains, etc., moving vast numbers of people, congestion in tourist locations and the effect that has upon local people. Lots of negative effects. It is probably a little bit harder to think of the positive effects of tourism, and certainly these do not get mentioned as much as the negative effects. I've already mentioned economic development, the fact that people in locations that attract tourists tend to become economically more sufficient, more prosperous. Equally, of course, their expectations change as they see what happens in other parts of the world, and they want the same kind of access to the benefits as well as the problems. So economic development is a double-edged effect upon tourism. But one clear effect is poverty alleviation. People in tourist areas tend to become more wealthy, there's less poverty around, and that of course is beneficial. Poverty alleviation is one of the aims of sustainable development generally. Then there's the the fact that educational opportunities arise from tourism. That certainly things like developing other languages is something that's needed, understanding and being able to talk about the history of a location, the effect of the environment, all those kind of things, increase the education of the people in the tourist area, as well as the increasing the education of the people visiting those areas, of course. So opportunities arise for developing education more generally amongst the people in the tourist locations, as well as educating people who visit those locations. And then the major benefit, which is never really mentioned, is the understanding of other cultures. If you visit other cultures, you tend to understand them better. If you are at one of those locations and get visitors from other cultures, you tend to understand those cultures better. And the more people understand the different cultures of other people around the world, the more they understand that we are really not that much different from each other. That in itself helps foster peace within the world, one of our most desirable outcomes. So tourism is not going to go away, should not go away. We need to manage it in a sustainable manner. That inevitably means a reduced volume of people travelling to the various locations, and one way to achieve that is through expanding virtual tourism, something we've seen a lot of during the lockdowns caused by the current pandemic. The other thing that's important is understanding the true cost of tourism and expecting people who visit to pay the full cost. Full cost includes effects upon the environment and those kind of things. It makes a more complex equation, but charging full cost shows the value of tourism and the benefit of it to people.
Merci.
Tell about not only plastic, but also how to find new solutions for both tourists and local communities, and also generate revenue thanks to it. There is a question about this, a question for David. First President, we have had a couple of questions as to whether the total price should include the rehabilitation costs. If so, it may not be available and affordable for everyone. But as Samuel just said, we could include local populations and help them work hand in hand with tourists. David, you are a tourism professional. So do you have anything to add on this?
Yes, I do. If we're going to be sustainable, we've got to be sustainable, which means it's a global issue. When I travel, I cause pollution from the time I step outside the door of my house, travel wherever I'm going, do whatever I'm doing, and return again. All of that is part of the cost of my traveling. And if I choose to travel, then I should bear the cost of that travel, the full cost. And that cost, it should include the cost of restitution of whatever I damage along the way. Of course it should. And of course, we can't all afford to travel everywhere we want to. So, but we make choices. If we want to be sustainable, we've got to be truly sustainable. Unless as a society, we choose to do it differently and to subsidize some people from other people to make the world sustainable. Sustainability is a global problem, and it's an absolute. I can't be sustainable by being more more sustainable than I was before, because that just means I'm less unsustainable. I'm not sustainable. So we have to recognize everything that's involved in achieving that sustainability. And as a society, we've got to deal with that issue. As a society, we make the choice whether to deal with it by me, myself, paying for my effects, or society as a whole covering the effects of everybody. But that's an ethical issue for society to decide, but it doesn't change the cost of tourism. It only changes who actually bears that cost.
Merci beaucoup, David.